Alright, so our previous videos have been relatively basic. Today we're going to start with a little more of an intermediate project. And we're going to be creating a group planting of a 3-tree forest. We have 3 Chinese elm pre-bonsai specimens that we're going to combine into this beautiful 3-tree group planting that you see in front of me.
Okay, so our project begins here at the nursery where we're selecting the trees for our forest. This is a good primary tree that I found, so it would be nice and straight, and we'll find a secondary and tertiary tree right here. The one to the right will be the 3rd tree, a little lower, has a wide canopy, and the one to the left will be the secondary tree, which will go a little bit closer to the primary tree. We'll sketch out a design for our forest, just a quick idea, so we have a basic layout of how we're going to design the forest.
So, from looking at these 3 trees, I see that this one is the tallest of the 3 and the most established. So we're going to be making this our primary tree.
Okay, just a couple tweaks here. Remove this branch from the primary tree. Clean it up a little bit.
Okay, so we're going into it with a general plan. Arrange them somewhere like that. So we have our general planning of our forest, just as we've sketched it out. So I have 3 gauges of wire to shape our trees and anchor them to our tray. We have 3mm, 2mm, and 1mm for the very fine tertiary branches. The first step will be cutting our drainage screen, covering our drainage holes with our drainage mesh, feeding our anchor wire through the holes in the pot, in our tray, in our forest tray, and then creating a drainage layer of soil.
Alright, so when we cut our screen, we're just going to make sure that we cut out 2 squares big enough to cover the holes, and then we're going to fasten them in place using our 1mm wire. And then we'll just butterfly the ends, just so we don't have wire all over the place and it's nice and clean. So we have our anchor wires fed through the holes. We're going to now flatten them onto the pot and create our drainage layer of soil. This is a blend of soil that I'm using that's lava rock, perlite, and a little bit of pumice added in. That's just for the drainage layer. Our main layer of soil will have a little bit of organic soil in it as well, that we're going to use, that was the soil that the trees came in from the nursery. So now we'll be looking at the root structure of our first tree and seeing it's not too pot bound, which is good. It'll be easy to just use the root rake to just remove the excess soil from the roots and then lightly untangle the roots using the root rake, but don't rip at it too hard where you're ripping the roots. Just gently with a nice soft poking and poking motion and just kind of jiggling the soil out. Chopstick is a perfect tool to use. It's good also when you finish a potting to get the air bubbles out of the roots. In this case, I'm using it to just loosen up those tight roots close to the base of the trunk. Finish up the job with the root rake, and now we have a nice shallow root system. That's what we're going for. We want wide and shallow, so we want it to spread nicely across the shallow, wide bottom of our forest tray. For our second tree, we'll remove it from the pot, take a look at the root system. Similar, not too pot bound, has a good root system though. So we'll be making sure we don't rip off the feeder roots, but removing the excess soil and flattening out that root system again. So we're going to spread it. Okay. So now that we have a great root system for this tree, it's ready to place in the tray. We're going to just kind of plan out how we're going to be anchoring it next to the primary tree, since this is our secondary tree. It's going to go a little bit closer to the primary tree than our tertiary tree. Wrap around our anchor wires and fasten it in place, and then twist the wire to secure it. Once we've secured the wire and the tree is nice and firm, we'll give it one more wrap just to be sure, one more time around, just so it's nice and tight. And we're also at the same time positioning the soil into the root system and in making sure that we work in that dry soil into our tree's root system. Little by little, we add more soil and we pat it down, and then we work it in with our chopstick. Don't worry if you use a metal or a wooden chopstick, it doesn't make a difference. Turntable helps too, because it helps you get to all the different angles of your arrangement, and at the same time I'm removing any excess debris I find around the tree or any dead roots that are old and need to be removed. Okay, so we have it fastened nice and tight. We're just hiding our anchor wire as much as possible under our soil and packing it down a little bit. Going one time more around our primary tree. Okay. Very secure, very anchored down, and we'll be just tightening it from the bottom a little bit so we get a more tight connection, and we'll be cutting off the excess there. Again, adding some more soil, working in the root system. And then I'll lay this one down because we'll be using it to secure our third tree. Back to the chopstick, working in the soil, packing it down with my fingers. Okay, so now we can start working on our third tree. Remove it from the pot. So it's a little more loose, actually. It has less roots than the other one, so I barely even need to use the root rake. Misting it a little just to make sure the roots didn't dry out too much. And back to the root rake, just loosely using that tapping, poking motion. Little by little, we work off that excess dirt. And we loosen it a little with our fingers and in an untangling motion. Untangle. And then we're going to, again, spread the root system and flatten it as much as possible. See? Nice and flat. Just before I put in my other tree, I'm going to work on this branch a little bit because it somewhat gets in the way of the other planting. So I'm just going to wrap the wire really quick and bend that way, so we can move our other tree a little bit closer. We're looking at the back right now. Okay, so we want our secondary tree nice and close. We'll cut off the excess wire. And then we will place our tertiary tree, our third tree in the forest. Then we'll secure it down with our anchor wire. Wrap it around one more time. And then press it down so it secures the tree in place. And then again, mist the roots a little bit just so they don't dry out in the area I was working. Just because I was working in an AC'd area. So be aware of that. If you're in the AC or you're out in the sun and it's very hot, just mist it a little. Okay? Fastening the wire, because you don't want to work with the roots too dry and have them break off while you're pressing down on that new soil. Cutting off one of the branches. Adding more soil and packing it down little by little. Slowly but surely, we're building our arrangement. So we want to get a nice center base of soil. The center is going to be the highest point, and then the soil is going to go down on the sides at an angle, of course. And then we're just packing it really good. We want to make sure that we work in this new soil into our new root system. Cutting off the excess wire, and then packing the soil more. Back to our chopstick, we will work in this soil more into our root system. It's very important that the soil is worked into the root system so that the roots can take hold to the new soil and we can get a nice new growth in our forest. Want to use a fast, gentle motion. But don't be scared because it's very good for the root system when you're using a chopstick when done properly. So lightly just tap, 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 tap. Okay, we're coming along here nicely. Continuing just to work in the soil a little bit. And then we can move on to wiring, styling, and trimming our forest. Just removing any excess leaves that may have fallen down or any debris from the top of the soil.
Alright, now we're ready to start wiring and shaping our branches. So we'll start with the apex of this tree. We'll wrap the wire around at a 45-degree angle across the branch. I'm using the 2mm gauge wire. And we'll just carefully wrap it around, avoiding the branches coming off of the larger branch. Okay, wrap it all the way around. Then we cut off the excess wire. Clean up any branches we see that we want to remove in the area and begin branch selection. And then shape the branch, bend it a little, and get the movement that we want to create in that top branch. And then we'll cut off the excess wire. And we'll basically be going through the same process, selecting the correct gauge for the thicknesses of the wires. A general rule of thumb is the gauge of the wire should be about a third of the size of the branch that you're wiring. Round about half to a third of the size of the branch you're wiring, so that way you can get good movement on the branch without breaking it or cracking it. So we're just wrapping around the branch at a 45-degree angle across the length of the branch. And then we will cut off our excess wire. Clean up any branches we want to take off while we're in there. So I see a couple problematic branches that are preventing it from falling in place, so I remove those just so we can properly shape our forest. And as we're doing that, I see branches like this one here that needs to be curved up. So we'll apply our wire and fix that. So slowly but surely, our forest is falling into place. Generally, the length of the branch, a little bit longer than the length of the branch, or about the length of the branch, is good length of wire for the branch you're wrapping. So enough to wrap it around and anchor it, and then enough for the length of the branch. So here we go. All right, we'll feed it through, wrap it around, and create our anchor. Once we've created our anchor here, we'll wrap the wire back around to the branch, create a loop at the base of the branch first, holding down the base of the trunk so the tree's not shaking too much. So we'll create that little initial loop at the base of the branch so it's supported, and then we'll wrap it across the length of the branch at a 45-degree angle. And we'll continue this process branch by branch throughout our forest, little by little, making changes. Okay, we have a branch here that needs to be curved up and forward. There we go. Now we'll cut off the excess wire. Beautiful. Okay, so now as I'm selecting branches, the question is, what do we look for? We look for branches that are facing downward at an angle, straight branches that don't have any movement, branches that need to be moved out of the way to create good branch structure for our trees. That's what we're trying to do, to try and get the shape that we initially planned for in our foliage. So right here we have a branch that's facing straight down, so we want to wrap the wire around and we're going to curve it upwards, carefully wrapping our wire, and there we go. We bend it up and then we have movement in that branch, and it's no longer facing straight down at such a sharp angle and has better movement in the tree. So we're basically going tree by tree and creating good movement, just like we would with individual bonsais, but for a forest. So here we're getting good shape on the back, you see, and we'll cut off that excess wire. Now we can begin to cut off our excess foliage. Just the outer leaves, just trimming up to give some shape to our forest. So basically we want to make sure that the leaves, the branches have grown out long enough that they have formed hardwood at the base so that they will ramify out and we'll get good branch structure on the outer branches. That's why we let them grow out long like that. For elms, you always want to make sure you've developed hardwood at the base before clipping the branches so that you can get another set of branches to ramify out. As you can see, we're getting little pockets of foliage. This one I'm going to go a little bit longer out. About 2 sets to 3 sets of leaves generally is the rule of thumb for how long you want to leave the branches. Right. Last branch. Now we'll just tweak this top branch of our tertiary tree, the one off to the side, the right side, and then we'll continue our trimming. See how we have hardwood there. Nice thick branches at the base. So those would be good branches to start being the next set of branches that will form. Okay, we've developed pretty good branch structure in this forest. It's coming out fairly well for the trees we selected. So we'll arrange some rocks just to give good aesthetic. And again, we'll be creating that center that rises, and the sides will slope down gradually as we get to the edges of the pot. We'll add a little moss just for decoration. Okay, wrapping it up, and finally we have our finished bonsai forest ready to go. If you've enjoyed this video, please smash that like and subscribe button.